Hi, welcome back to In Your Defense. I'm attorney Steve Toland. Today we're going to continue our discussion of self-defense and the justification defenses in Texas. And it reminds me of a story about a client I have. I had a client come in who was charged with assault after headbutting somebody in a soccer match. And I immediately thought this sounded strange. As I learned a little bit more about his case, I got very excited about our chances of dismissal or an acquittal. So I thought, well, they all consented to any physical contact. I mean, it's a soccer match. I later learned, as our defense fell apart, that he had headbutted the referee in the soccer match. That's not quite the same thing. And of course, his defense fell apart. But it does remind us that there are four examples in life that you can never justify your use of force through self-defense. So the first one is consent. When you consent to an activity and it's agreed upon that people are going to use force upon one another, boxing, for example, football, soccer players, within reason of the rules of the game. If you consent to that, you can't justify getting hit and then argue self-defense when you hit someone back. Number two is resisting arrest if it's a lawful arrest, even if the arrest turns out to be a mistake. That sounds very counterintuitive, but let's say the police come and arrest John Smith and it turns out that you're John Edward Smith and you're not the same person, but if the police come and arrest you peacefully without using excessive force upon you, you can't resist arrest and use force and hit the police officer and then justify your actions through self-defense. I know it's a tough one, but that's the rule. So if it's a lawful arrest, even if it's a mistake about your identity, for example, you can't use self-defense in that example. The third one is words alone. So words alone can never be enough to justify you using physical force upon another person. Now there are, of course, exceptions to that as well. If somebody threatens you with some pretty serious threats to harm you and they're standing in your living room when they make these threats and it's 2 in the morning and they're in your living room making these threats, obviously that's a very different example. So as a general rule, if you're out in public, words alone aren't enough to justify you using force on the other person. That example I gave a second ago inside one's home is the castle doctrine. We're going to talk about that on some later episodes of In Your Defense. And the fourth example that highlights you can never use this and be justified in self-defense is just when you're the person who provokes the situation. So if you start the argument, you got to live with the deal and how it goes down. You can't later argue self-defense and use force. You can't create a situation that justifies you using force on someone. Especially, let's say you pick a fight with your arch enemy using words and it escalates to a situation. Well, if you start it like that, you can't use self-defense later. So those are the four examples that highlight some exceptions to the general rule of using force to defend yourself. As we continue our discussion, we're going to talk about defense of third parties and the use of deadly force in defending yourself, defending your home, or if you're in your car or if it's your workplace. Texas has some very specific examples of the castle doctrine. We're going to dive into those on some of our next couple of series here on In Your Defense. As always, I encourage you to reach out to me, attorney Steve Toland, or us here at Peek & Toland if you have any questions about defenses of property, defenses of self, any justification defenses. Thank you for your time.